we're looking at Zen Buddhism. And Zen is really about direct contact. That any language that we use is meant, it comes from Zen, the phrase, it's the finger pointing at the moon, but it's not the moon itself. Language is the finger pointing at the moon, but it's never the moon itself. So we don't want to get so enthralled with language, with concepts, that we actually miss having the direct contact with pure spirit. One of the ways that Zen does this is through meditation, but they also have something called Zen koans. And the Zen koans are the linear mind. Anyway, actually, if you just read anything, some of you have read Shunryu Suzuki's Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. If you read anything that's Zen, they play with words, so it does not make linear sense. If you're used to normal linear language, it's not going to work. It's playing language against itself because it is. It's trying to scramble the mind to get us out of our illusion that by thinking in a rational way, we can get to spirit. Spirit includes rational thinking, but is never limited by rational thinking. So Zen plays with language a lot and is constantly paradoxical, going from opposites back and forth and saying both are true, and your mind saying, oh, no, that doesn't make sense, which is exactly its intention. And then Zen koans are puzzles that can take years for a practitioner to get the aha moment. So you've heard them. I think the most famous one is if a tree falls in a forest and nobody hears it, does it make a sound? What was your original face before your ancestors lived? Not just before you were born, but before your ancestors were born. What was the original, the appearance of your original face? So these are questions that we don't answer with our linear mind, but by continuing to be in it and transcending the words of language and concept, suddenly we'll have this breakthrough, and they call that a kensho, an opening, just an awakening to that there's something that's transcendent that we can actually know, but we can't describe with words. I've never worked with the Zen koan myself, but I did work with, it's a sort of a similar idea. There's the who am I inquiry, which is a question, and you don't try to answer it with your human mind, I'm Harriet and all that stuff. You're not answering it humanly. Who am I? Who am I? So I was with this 24 hours a day. I was using it like a mantra. Just who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Not trying to answer it with my mind, just being in the question. And 3 weeks later, it was exactly what they talk about with the Zen koan. There was just a pop. I know exactly where I was. I know exactly everything that I saw because it just opened up. Who am I? And I just suddenly saw it as a whole. It wasn't a linear deduction. And so much of what we do is so linear. Intuition is not linear. That's why I love Jack's song and asked him to play it today. It wasn't about, he knew his love of God, not from thinking about it. He just knew. It was there in his, I love that line. It was in my heart. It was there from the start. It's just there. All this intuition, all this knowing is within us. The wholeness of it. And we don't have to work so hard at it sometimes. We just have to we do all our thinking and then we let it go and out it pops, this awareness, this new way. And it's not just answers. Spiritually, what we're looking for is revelation, insights. This has nothing to do with the talk, but I just like it. And the reason I just want to do. So when I was, they gave a Zen koan in the book using a goose. So the Zen koan is an officer came to a Zen master and said, there was a goose that was in a bottle, but the goose keeps growing, and now it needs to get out of the bottle. How do we get the goose out of the bottle without hurting the goose or the bottle? And the master says, Mr. Officer, and he says, yes. He goes, it's out. And that's the Zen koan. See, they don't make sense. But it reminded me of a riddle that was like that, so I just have to do my riddle. So Reverend Michael told this riddle, and I just thought it was great. He said, it's very similar. Imagine a goose is in a bottle, and the goose is growing. How do you get the goose out of the bottle without breaking the bottle or hurting the goose? Anyone know? See, this again, something you be with. So it could be like a Zen koan. You be with it, but I won't make you be with it. I'll give you the answer. The answer is, I said, imagine the goose is in the bottle. The goose was never in the bottle. You just imagine the whole thing. You imagine outside of the bottle. It's easy. Bing! See what our mind does, though? We make constructs with our imagination. And what Zen is trying to use is using those same constructs, those same words and concepts to blast us out of how we normally think of the world and reality. So it really makes you alive and awake and to see things new and fresh. Now, what inspired this talk this morning is because I had an interesting experience 2 weeks ago with a dream. And it was all about intuition and this communication beyond words. So not last Saturday, but the Saturday before, Roy Eugene Davis, who's the last living disciple of Yogananda, who's teaching Kriya Yoga, was teaching Kriya Yoga down in San Jose, so a few of us went down there. I was very excited for this event. I've been initiated 2 other times. The first time was 8 years ago by Roy Eugene Davis, but somehow this time felt really different. I think I'm in a different place. Maybe I've been doing Kriya for 8 years, so there was just this energy. And earlier in the week, I had a dream with Yogananda. Now, for those of you who've been coming for a while, you know that I sometimes have these vision dreams. My calling to ministry was with Yogananda. It was 25 years ago, and it was with Yogananda and Shunryu Suzuki, and this is very key. First of all, it's what I call a vision dream. If you've had visions, it doesn't matter if you're awake in meditation. You're in meditation. It could be just when you're walking your dog, or it could be happening when you're sleeping. It's very clear, and it's imprinted on your mind. So though it happened 25 years ago, I don't need to go back and read what the dream was. It's there. It's the whole thing. And it was very direct, and it was intentionally very direct. You need to be a minister. 3 times. You need to be a minister. You need to be a minister. So that's key to this dream 2 weeks ago. So, and at other times throughout my life, when I've had questions, big questions like where I'm going, I've had to get still, get really, really still. Sometimes it's really hard, so I will spend a couple hours I'm not getting up until I know that I know that I know. And if I just keep letting myself get quieter and quieter and quieter, a vision or something very clear will happen to tell me which direction to go in. So the dream last 2 weeks was none of that. It was a very ordinary dream, which was sort of what threw me. So there's Yogananda, and there's a saying that if a pickpocket comes in contact with a saint, the only thing the pickpocket sees are the saint's pockets. That's very much what this dream was. In this dream, I was fully in my humanness. There was no spiritual consciousness whatsoever. So only in retrospect did I realize Yogananda was meditating, but I was in the dream and I wanted answers. So I'm like, wake up. I thought he was sleeping. I'm like, why are you sleeping? I want you to wake up and answer my questions. And he wouldn't answer them. I'm like, come on, I can see your eyes are partially open. Wake up. And then he did one thing trying to get me into that whole nonverbal place. I wasn't having it. I want an answer. I want that direct, clear answer. Because I wasn't going to settle. I was very much in my human self. And finally, the dream ends with him turning to me, and he says something. I said, "Taifu?" He goes, "No, eat more tofu." And I turned back and went back into meditation. I woke up, and I was so befuddled by this. I'm like, what? So first of all, let me say this was not a vision dream. I had to go back and keep reading because it didn't stick in my brain. I'm like, but he was still Yogananda, so I did buy a book with 350 recipes for tofu. Lots of meals to look forward to. But as I was with it, there actually was so much information in this dream. And what I received from it more than anything was to remember that there is always so much information, even in the ordinary state. I would say the number one thing that when people come to talk with me one-on-one, and often what happens in class, if people want clarity, I want clarity about what to do next. I don't know, I'm in this challenging situation, I'm not quite sure of the next goal, guidance. And what I realized, what this dream was showing to me, maybe you all know this, I'm just slow, is often when I'm saying I want guidance, I'm looking for some vision. I'm looking for a transcendent experience, or at least a non-ordinary state experience, where I just know that I know this is the right, and I'm not going to move until I've had some big spiritual or even non-ordinary state, just something that's clear that this is the path that I go on. And what I was getting from this dream is in the most ordinary states of consciousness. I was in my absolute human state of consciousness. I was not picking up anything spiritual about him. No sense that he was meditating. But that was the point. Even in the midst of my density as a human being and my identity as a human being, still there was so much guidance coming if I just stopped asking the question and saying I'm not getting the answer that I'm looking for. Because I was definitely looking for the vehicle. I was asking him, I wanted him to speak to me in words, basically. I wanted him to say, this is the answer to what you're asking. And he was trying to get me to let go of needing that very clear words or direction and start intuiting, feeling what it is that I'm guiding you. And suddenly, as I allowed, because that's what amazed me, that in fact, as I journaled about it, suddenly I realized how profound that dream was, but I couldn't see it while I was in the dream because I was so in the human consciousness. So behind everything, and as we continue to say yes to those intuitive calling, what we'll find is the energy starts to build. And we'll say, yes, yes, and then everything in the universe is always supporting us, always. There's no way to make a wrong decision, because even if you feel like it's going here and it's suddenly, that's not right, then you get led this way. So we just keep saying yes, we keep following that voice. And the way to do that is to follow it, to listen to it. Now that doesn't mean sometimes my voice doesn't come as habit patterns, race consciousness, things my parents taught me, things our teaching teaches us, so preconceived ideas. So that's the other part of it. I think it was Socrates who said, the life unexamined is not worth living. To really know that interior world, when am I coming from my habit patterns? When is that voice coming from habit patterns or from race consciousness, the collective culture that I'm in, and when is it coming from spirit? I love Marianne Morrissey. Someone asked her, how do you know when it's the voice of God? Now, this was before cell phones. This is the old day of phones. And she said, you know when your parents call you or your mom calls you and you pick it up and they don't have to say, this is your mom. You go, oh, hi, Mom. You know it immediately. You know their voice. That's the more we get to know our spiritual self, because it's in our voice. The ordinary voice, it's ordinary. It's going to be in your voice, but you're going to know it's spirit because you spent so much time connecting with spirit. You're going to know when spirit's guiding you in a certain direction, and you just say yes. Just say yes, and we follow it. And what I discovered is that it doesn't have to be this great big thing, and that's what I was. Not only do I realize I have that bias, but I think a lot of us do, because I hear so much, I'm not getting guidance or I'm not clear. And if we start realizing that clarity, that intuition is working in us all of the time, but sometimes we're not hearing it because we're expecting it to look a certain way. And then even as we went on and we went to the Roy Eugene Davis experience, the joy and the energy was flying through that room, and yet it was completely ordinary. He just sat in his chair. We barely meditated. It was to initiate into Kriya Yoga, but I think he just wanted to tell stories. He's in his 80s. He's got all these great stories. So he's just sitting in a chair, talking, telling stories. And we couldn't figure out, but we were like all in this energy and joy on the way home and just so happy, and because it's all happening quietly inside of us. You have one person who's deeply connected, and we're there to be deeply connected, and it's just that yes to that internal voice within you, and the energy starts moving. And I say that and inviting, the reason why I wanted to really bring that home to us today is because I think sometimes in our culture we get very extroverted. We have to have big music and big stories and inspirational stories that move us, and we need a lot of stuff to get us emotionally into that feeling of spirit, but we have to recognize the power of spirit is just as much in that quiet moment. In fact, it sometimes can be even more, and it's intense. There's this great Zen quote. I put it on my Facebook page yesterday, now I can't remember. It was something along the line. Someone asked, what is all this Zen done for you? They spent 7 years in Kyoto practicing Zen. And they said, well, no paranormal experiences that I can think of, but when I wake up in the morning, the beauty of the world is so great, I can hardly stand it. And that's what it really becomes. It just becomes this ever-ordinary beauty and magnificence that we're living in every day, and it's ordinary, but as we're recognizing it and seeing it in one another as well, so it's not just listening to the intuition in ourselves, but seeing it in other people. In the dream, Yogananda was just a guy. I was seeing him like a pickpocket. He's a saint, with the pockets. We do that to each other all the time. When we're talking, I'm just talking to to people. I'm just talking to a human being who has this whole story, and I could tell you, if I know so, maybe I could tell you the stories and blah, blah, blah. But that's not who we are. That's the surface of who we are. When we start remembering to talk to the divine being, and this is where we can use our mind and imagination, remember the power of imagination? When I can talk to each person, and instead of seeing only the form, I'm seeing an actual energy body. I can choose to, just with my imagination, see a light being. That I'm actually talking to a being full of light, golden light. And I can make that choice with every single conversation I'm in. Even if it's on the phone, in my head, I can picture them, a being of light. I'm talking to a being of light. We say in our teaching, they're whole, perfect, and complete. And that's true, but sometimes we need form. One of the reasons why I have teachers is because I was very clear with Spirit that I need some sort of form. I love the divine, but I like form as well. And so I see the divine and form in my spiritual teachers. But everyone is our spiritual teacher. And everyone is our spiritual teacher. And so are we seeing everyone as our spiritual teacher? Are we seeing the register at Lucky, the cash register, as a light being? And are we talking to a light being, or are we talking to a human being? Everywhere we go, at work, am I working with people? Am I working with clients and employers? Or am I surrounded by light beings in everything that I do? It starts to become a way of being. Zen is very big about bringing this transcendent into the ordinary. After enlightenment, the laundry. Your laundry is full of light. When we start choosing to see beyond appearances, and sometimes we can just hold the idea, the concept of it, or the picture of it, and that will get us to the actual experience of intuiting things that we can't even begin to imagine in our mental state, because our mental state can only go so far. I think I mentioned this before. I saw Reverend Michael, I think the last time was a couple years ago. I was at Oakland Center. Reverend Joan was retiring. There was a big celebration afterwards. So we're in the middle of this room. There's just chatter, small talk. I'm talking with him. I believe I asked him about something about his favorite movies. The only thing I can remember is the conversation after that, which was about movies. So it's nothing spiritual, ordinary conversation, people everywhere. But the conversation was happening almost entirely in pictures. That we were using words, but the words were like fingers pointing at the images, and so we had this entire conversation just beyond the words of language. We use language, like Zen can use language as pointers, it's there, but the information, what was being shared back and forth, was so much more. A picture's worth 1,000 words. We were communicating at such vast information about movies, nothing important. And that's what I love about it. It was just, in fact, I was thinking about the various experiences I've had with Reverend Michael, and they're almost never about spirit. It was always about something else that was mundane and ordinary, but the presence and the power of pure spirit was in the midst of it. It's consciously recognized by both parties, so suddenly the conversation is going to a different place, and it's going beyond words. So it's about letting go of our attachment to words, that every word that is being said here today, every song, every conversation, there's always so much more happening underneath all of the time. And that's where our intuition, Ernest Holmes says, intuition is God speaking to itself. We are the divine, and it's ordinary. It's not a big transcendent event. It can be, but those are few and far between. The ordinariness of spirit, God, divine intelligence, whatever language you want to use, is speaking to itself as us. It's going to be in our own voice. It's not going to be some other transcendent voice. It's going to be our voice, but we're just going to know. We're going to start knowing that we know. Going back to the song that Jack was singing, I just know. I don't know how I know. Intuition bypasses reason. I just know. I feel it. It's not what's going on over the tongue, it's what's going under the tongue. It's not what we see with our visual eyes, it's what we see with our spiritual eyes. It's not what we hear with our ears, it's what we hear with the ears behind the ears. It's happening all of the time when we choose to practice this, and it's available to us right now in this room. It's happening now, not just in the future, in this very moment. So the invitation this week is to allow yourself to experience the power and the presence of spirit intuitively. If there's something you want a question for, and by the way, this is my own personal preference. I know most people I talk with are not really attached to form. I like form, so I like my teachers. So I will ask Yogananda. Yogananda transcends form. Jesus transcends form. But I ask them in form because it just helps me hear the answer. And I ask, and so after I had the stream with Yogananda, I started practicing asking him questions, and it was amazing the answers I was getting because I was open and I was willing and I was saying yes to it, and I wasn't afraid that it wasn't true or real. Don't be afraid. Just keep saying yes. There's no way to make a wrong answer. Even if it's coming from habit patterns, it will be revealed to you. If your intention is always to listen to Spirit, Spirit's going to help you figure out what that is. This week we have, for people who identify as Christian, it's Holy Week. We have Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, Easter. Friday sundown begins Passover. That goes on for a week until April 7th. If you feel connected with any of these spiritual teachers, if you feel connected with Moses or Mary, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, Jesus, any of these people, the light beings exist. You're here in front of us. We're all sitting with light beings. But our light beingness is eternal. It's always here. So we can connect with light beings on the other side of the veil who are fully present here, that are fully present in our hearts. They can be from 2,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. They're here. So invite them in. Invite them in and ask them for anything that you want to know. Spirit is abundantly generous. It's not withholding from us. It's not playing games with us. The question is, are we completely unconditional in our listening and our willingness to hear what it's saying and the way it wants to say it to us? Because the way it wants to say to us may be not what we expect. St. Francis of Assisi, as many of you know, would tell his monks to go out. And he would say, go out and preach the gospel. Go out and preach the good news. And if you must, use words. Go out and preach the good news. And if you must, use words. And at the very least this week, hear these words: eat more tofu. Let's pray. I am so grateful to be in this room right now in this moment, so full of love. The consciousness of pure spirit is awake and alive and aware as each and every individual expression in this room right here and right now. I feel it, I sense it. And we all are conscious that who we really are is beyond our story, beyond our form. It is that and so much more. So even as we pray using language and words today, I invite those of you who are listening to move beyond the words. Let the words just guide you to your own interior connection with pure spirit. So it's not important to follow the words, but to follow the energy within your heart and your soul. As we recognize that there is only one power and one presence, that it is infinitely good all of the time, that it is always, always for itself. There is no opposite. There is no other. There is only this one. This one simply is. It just is. The goodness just is. The love is. The peace is. The abundance is. And what an incredible miracle to have that personal and divine revelation that we are this isness. We are this wholeness. We are this love. We are this peace. We are this enlightened self now. We are whole now. We are free now. We are never limited by past precedent. We are never limited by past habit patterns because we are more than that, even now. Spirit is more than this. Then whatever is happening in form, it is more than this. It includes all of it, and it is more. And we live in that more. We are that more. We listen to that more. We allow our natural intuitive spirit speak itself into form as us moment after moment, breath after breath. We listen to it in all of its many vehicles of sharing, in our dream states, in our human states, in our elevated states, in our relationships with every person with whom we have come in contact. Every conversation is a conversation with the divine. Every action that we are doing is an action within, through, and as the divine. Everything that we are doing for our work life, for finances, is the divine doing itself, bringing itself into form. Moment after moment, breath after breath, never limited, never in fear, never in bondage. It is always activated here and now through our physical and emotional and mental bodies, personally and collectively for this entire planet. We are swimming in this oceanic of peace, of joy, and of love right now. In this very moment, we are that consciousness. We see that consciousness. We hold that consciousness. We express that consciousness. We engage and participate in this beautiful planet as this consciousness of wholeness and perfection and in love. And we allow ourselves to hear beyond what the words are saying. We allow ourselves to feel that which isn't necessarily on the visible, but that which is in the invisible. We allow ourselves to see what the eyes cannot see, and yet that wonderful inner eye can see all. We allow ourselves to know that we know that we know. We don't know how we know, we just know. And it is in that knowing all the healing takes place that needs to take place. As Ernest Holmes says, there is nothing to be healed, only the divine to be revealed. And we are the revealers right now, in this moment. We are the revealers of the kingdom of heaven on earth, right in this moment, as individuals, as family members, as community members, as citizens of this country, and as citizens of this planet, and citizens of this cosmos. We are all of it. Right now, in this room, no limitation, no limitation. We are it now, right now. Nowhere to go. We don't have to think anything else. No perfect thoughts are needed. It just is. It's us now. In deep abiding gratitude, I just give thanks for this awareness, for this realization, and for this continued realization as we move through the rest of our service and our day and our week. I give thanks for all the tofu in the world, and I bless our morning and our day, and I invite us all to say together now, and so it is. Amen and amen.